The cargo ship drifted into Docking Bay 17 with a soft hiss of pressure seals. Jake Morrison stretched his arms above his head and yawned. 3 weeks of flying alone through empty space always made him stiff. He grabbed his datapad and headed toward the airlock. Nexus 7 was busy as always. The massive space station floated at the edge of neutral territory, where dozens of alien species came to trade. Jake had been here many times in the past 3 years. Ever since Earth joined the Galactic Council, human traders like him had been working the outer routes. The pay was decent, and the work was honest. He walked through the main corridor, passing aliens of all shapes and sizes. Tall ones, short ones, ones with scales, ones with fur, and some that looked like they were made of rocks. Most of them ignored him. Humans were new to the galaxy, and not particularly impressive. They were smaller than most warrior races, weaker than most labor species, and had no natural weapons or armor. Jake didn't mind. He was just here to deliver his cargo and pick up the next load. Across the station, in the security office, Lyra stood at her post. She was a Valesian, and her kind were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. Her scales were deep green with hints of gold, and her eyes could track movement that most species would miss. She wore the armor of a diplomat guard. Though she had earned it through countless battles, Lyra found most species boring. The Galactic Council was full of merchants and politicians who talked endlessly about trade agreements and peace treaties. Her people believed in strength and honor. They respected those who could fight. And they had little patience for the weak. Humans, in her opinion, were especially unimpressive. She had read the reports when Earth joined the Council. They came from a low-gravity world. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor plating. Their military technology was primitive compared to most spacefaring races. They were fragile and soft. She was reviewing security feeds when her communicator buzzed. A minor disturbance in the lower docks. Probably nothing serious. Lyra decided to check it out anyway. Guard duty was tedious, and she needed to stretch her legs. Jake had just finished inspecting his delivered cargo when he heard the sound. It came from behind a stack of shipping containers in a dimly lit section of the dock. A voice, high-pitched and scared, speaking in broken galactic common. "Please, no take. I pay later. Please." Jake stopped walking. His first instinct was to keep moving. Getting involved in station business was usually a bad idea. But something in that voice made him pause. It sounded young. Frightened, he set down his datapad and moved quietly toward the sound. 3 large aliens had cornered someone against the wall. They were Krathians. Jake recognized them from their thick gray armor plating and the distinctive ridge of spikes along their spines. Each one stood at least 7 feet tall. They were speaking in harsh, guttural tones. The one being cornered was a small merchant, maybe 4 feet tall, with blue skin and large eyes. One of the Krathians grabbed the merchant by the arm. Jake's jaw tightened. He knew what this was. Pirates. Probably trying to kidnap the merchant for ransom or slave trade. He should call security. That was the smart move. But security might take 10 minutes to arrive, and this merchant didn't have 10 minutes. Jake picked up a piece of metal pipe from the ground. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Hey," he called out. His voice echoed in the empty dock. The 3 Krathians turned to look at him. One of them laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound. "Human," the largest one said. "Walk away. This not your concern." "Let the merchant go," Jake said. His heart was pounding, but he kept his voice steady. The Krathians looked at each other. Then they started moving toward him. The merchant scrambled away, running toward the main corridor. Good, Jake thought. At least that worked. The largest Krathian cracked his knuckles. Stupid human. You know what happened to those who interfere with Krathian business? Jake dropped the pipe. If he used a weapon first, station security would arrest him for starting a fight. He raised his fists instead. The Krathians laughed again. Lyra arrived at the lower dock entrance just in time to see it begin. A human, standing alone against 3 Krathian pirates. She had seen this kind of situation before. Usually, the victim fled or died within seconds. She expected the human to run. Any sensible being would. Instead, he stood his ground. The first Krathian charged. The human didn't try to block the attack head-on. Instead, he moved at the last second, letting the pirate's momentum carry him past. The human kicked out, catching the Krathian in the knee joint where the armor plates separated. The Krathian stumbled. Lyra's eyes widened. That was actually clever. The second Krathian swung a massive fist. It connected with the human's shoulder, and Lyra heard the impact from 20 feet away. The human spun and fell to one knee, but he got back up. Lyra moved closer, staying in the shadows. She wanted to see how this would end. The human was clearly outmatched. The Krathians were bigger, stronger, and armored. But there was something in the way he moved. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to survive long enough for help to arrive. He was buying time. The third Krathian grabbed a cargo container and threw it. The human rolled to the side, barely avoiding it. He grabbed a loading hook from the ground and threw it at the nearest Krathian's face. It bounced off the armor but distracted the pirate long enough for the human to create distance. The fight went on. Lyra counted the seconds. 30, 40, 50. The human took hit after hit, but he kept fighting. He used the environment, throwing small objects, hiding behind containers, exploiting every advantage he could find. At 2 minutes, one of the Krathians was breathing hard. The human was bleeding from his mouth and limping, but he was still standing. At 3 minutes, the Krathians looked at each other. They were frustrated. This was taking too long, and the merchant had escaped. Station security would arrive soon. The largest Krathian spat on the ground. This not over, human. They retreated into the shadows of the dock and disappeared through a maintenance hatch. The human stood there for a moment, swaying on his feet. Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed. Lyra stepped out of the shadows. She looked down at the unconscious human, then at the blood on the floor, then at the dents in the cargo containers from the fight. In the Valesian language, she whispered words that surprised even herself. I wish he was mine. Jake woke up to bright lights and the smell of antiseptic. His entire body hurt. Every muscle screamed at him when he tried to move. He groaned and opened his eyes slowly. He was in a medical bay. The ceiling was white and curved. Through a window, he could see the stars and the distant glow of Nexus 7's main hub. An alien medical drone hovered nearby, its scanner lights blinking softly. You are awake, a voice said. Jake turned his head. Standing next to his bed was a tall alien with green and gold scales. She wore armor that looked both decorative and functional. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, watching him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Who are you? Jake asked. His voice came out rough and dry. My name is Lyra. I am with station security. She poured water into a cup and handed it to him. You fought 3 Krathian pirates yesterday. Do you remember? Jake took the water gratefully. Yeah. Is the merchant okay? The merchant is safe. They reported the incident and identified the pirates. Lyra pulled a chair over and sat down. The merchant is from a wealthy family. They are grateful you intervened. Good, Jake said. He tried to sit up and winced. His ribs were bandaged, and his left arm was in a support brace. Lyra studied him carefully. Why did you fight? Because they were hurting someone. You had no weapon. You had no backup. You had no chance of winning. Lyra leaned forward. Any reasonable being would have called security and stayed away. Jake shrugged with his good shoulder. I didn't think about it that much. I just saw someone in trouble. This answer seemed to confuse Lyra. She tilted her head slightly. You risked your life without thinking? I guess so. Lyra was quiet for a moment. In her culture, warriors thought carefully about honor and glory before fighting. They weighed the risks. They considered the benefits. This human had simply acted on instinct to help a stranger. "What is your name?" she asked. "Jake Morrison." "Jake Morrison," she repeated, testing the sounds. "I have questions about your fighting style. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Like what?" Jake asked. "Without weapons, using the environment, refusing to stay down even when struck." Jake thought about it. "I did some boxing when I was younger. Mixed martial arts too. Basic self-defense stuff. But mostly, I was just trying not to die." "Boxing? Martial arts?" Lyra pulled out her datapad and made notes. "These are human combat traditions?" "Yeah. Pretty common back on Earth." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "Your entire species trains in combat?" "Not everyone. But a lot of people do. It's exercise mostly. Sport. Some people do it professionally." This information troubled Lyra. According to the Galactic Council files, humans were a weak species. But if they had species-wide combat training traditions, perhaps the assessment was wrong. Over the next 2 days, while Jake recovered in the medical bay, Lyra visited often. She asked many questions about Earth and human culture. She learned about human history, their wars, their sports, their strange custom of deliberately fighting each other for entertainment and honor. She discovered that humans came from a world where almost everything was trying to kill them. Predators, diseases, weather, even other humans. They had survived not through strength or armor, but through stubbornness and adaptation. She learned about human endurance hunting, where ancient humans would chase animals for hours until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. She read about human soldiers who continued fighting with terrible injuries. She studied human athletes who pushed their bodies far beyond what seemed possible. The more she learned, the more interested she became. On the 3rd day, Jake was cleared to leave medical. His ship was still docked, and he was preparing to depart when his communicator buzzed with an official message. Station authorities wanted to see him immediately. Jake found himself in a conference room with 3 aliens he didn't recognize, and one he did. The head of station security, a bulky creature with 4 arms, sat at the head of the table. "Jake Morrison," the security chief said. "We have a situation." The Krathian pirates he had fought belonged to a larger criminal syndicate. The syndicate was demanding that Jake be turned over to them for attacking their members. They claimed he had started the fight without provocation. "That's not true," Jake said. "They were kidnapping someone." "We know," the security chief said. "But the syndicate has influence. They have threatened to stop all trade shipments through this station if we don't comply." Jake felt cold. "So you're going to hand me over?" One of the other officials, a thin alien with too many eyes, spoke up. "There is another option. The syndicate leader has invoked an ancient law. Trial by combat. If you fight their champion and win, all charges are dropped. If you lose." The alien didn't finish the sentence. "Who's their champion?" Jake asked. Lyra's voice came from the doorway. "Drak the Undying." Everyone turned to look at her. She walked into the room without being invited. The security chief glared at her, but she ignored him. "Drak has won 47 trial combats," Lyra continued. "He is 9 feet tall and weighs 400 pounds. He has killed opponents from 12 different species." Jake swallowed hard. "When is the trial?" 3 days, the security chief said. "You can select a champion to fight in your place, if you wish." Jake looked around the room. Nobody met his eyes. Nobody would volunteer to fight Drak. He was on his own. "I'll do it myself," Jake said. The officials looked surprised. The security chief nodded slowly. "Very well. You have 3 days to prepare. The trial will be held in the main arena." As the meeting ended and Jake walked out, Lyra followed him into the corridor. "You will die," she said, bluntly. "Maybe," Jake said. "But I'm not going to let them take me without a fight." Lyra grabbed his arm, stopping him. Her grip was strong but not painful. "Why do humans do this? Why fight when you cannot win?" Jake looked at her directly. "Because sometimes fighting is the right thing to do, even if you're going to lose. We don't fight because we'll win. We fight because we have to." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she released his arm. "Come with me," she said. "Where?" "To the training facility. If you are going to fight Drock, you need to learn how to survive more than 30 seconds. She started walking, then looked back at him. "I will train you." "Why would you help me?" Jake asked. Lyra hesitated. She thought about the words she had whispered in the dock, words that meant more in her culture than he could possibly understand. "Because," she said finally, "I have never met anyone like you before." The training facility was empty when Lyra led Jake inside. It was a large circular room with padded floors and various equipment along the walls. The gravity could be adjusted to match any species' homeworld. "We start now," Lyra said. She removed her decorative armor, revealing fitted training gear underneath. "Show me how you fight. Show me how you fight." For the next hour, Jake demonstrated the techniques he knew. Boxing combinations, wrestling moves, kicks and blocks from mixed martial arts. Lyra watched everything carefully, sometimes asking him to repeat a movement. "Interesting," she said finally. "Human combat is very close range. You have no natural weapons, so you developed ways to use your whole body." "I guess that's right," Jake said, breathing hard. Lyra began circling him slowly. "Drock will have reach advantage. He will have weight advantage. He will have strength advantage. If you fight him the way you fought the pirates, you will die in seconds." "Then how do I fight him?" "By using what humans are good at." Lyra stopped in front of him. "In the dock, you lasted 3 minutes against 3 opponents who should have killed you in 30 seconds. Do you know why you survived?" Jake thought about it. "I kept moving?" "Yes, but more than that. You adapted. Every time they tried the same attack twice, you had already figured out how to counter it. You learned while fighting." Lyra tapped her datapad, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed Jake's fight with the pirates from multiple angles. "Here," Lyra pointed. "The first Krathian charges at you. You dodge. 20 seconds later, he charges again, and you are already moving before he commits to the attack. You predicted his behavior." Jake watched the hologram. He hadn't realized he was doing that. "Humans are adaptation specialists," Lyra continued. "Your species survived on a deadly world by being flexible and persistent. We will use this." She dismissed the hologram. "Drock is powerful, but he is predictable. He has won 47 fights using the same basic strategy. He overwhelms opponents with strength and fear. And if that doesn't work, then we exploit his other weakness." Lyra smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Stamina. Lyra. Access." Over the next 3 days, Lyra put Jake through intense training. She taught him Valesian combat techniques designed for fighting larger opponents. How to redirect force instead of blocking it. How to strike at weak points in armor. How to maintain balance when being thrown around. But more importantly, she taught him how to endure. Valesian warriors trained their bodies to ignore pain and fatigue. They learned to push past the point where other species would collapse. It was similar to what human endurance athletes did, but more focused on combat survival. "Pain is information," Lyra explained during one session. "It tells you that you are damaged. But information is not the same as incapacity. Your body can continue functioning long after pain begins." Jake learned to recognize the difference between hurt and injured. He learned breathing techniques to manage his energy. He learned how to fall and roll to minimize damage. Between training sessions, they talked. Jake told Lyra about Earth, about oceans and forests and cities, about human music and art and food, about the diversity of human cultures, each with their own traditions and values. Lyra told Jake about Valesia, about the warrior clans and the honor duels, about their long history of conquest and their current role as peacekeepers in the galaxy, about the loneliness of being at the top, where respect was common but friendship was rare. Other species fear us, Lyra admitted one evening. They were sitting on the training floor, both exhausted from the day's work. They respect our strength, but they do not like us. We have few real allies. That sounds lonely, Jake said. It is. Lyra looked at him. But humans do not seem afraid of me. Should I be? Most beings are. She studied his face. You are strange, Jake Morrison. You fight when you should run. You help strangers at great personal cost. You treat me like a person, not a predator. You are a person, Jake said simply. Lyra was quiet for a moment. In my culture, there is a phrase. When a warrior sees great courage or skill in another, we say, I wish they were Valesian. It is the highest compliment we can give. Is that what you said? In the dock? After I passed out? Lyra looked surprised. You heard that? No. But you just explained it. She looked away, and Jake noticed the scales on her neck had changed to a slightly darker shade. Was she embarrassed? Yes, Lyra admitted. I said it. I have never said it about another species before. I'm honored, Jake said. And he meant it. You should not be. It has caused me problems. Lyra stood up and began pacing. My commander is angry with me for training you. Other Valesians have heard what I said. They think I have lost my mind. Why? Because wishing someone was Valesian means more than respect. It means... She struggled to find the words in Galactic Common. It means you see them as a potential equal, as someone worthy of standing beside you. In some contexts, it means you see them as a potential mate. Jake's eyes widened. Oh, I did not think about those implications when I said it, Lyra continued quickly. I was simply surprised by your courage. But now my fellow warriors are gossiping, and my commander thinks I have become attached to you, which is inappropriate for a guard. I'm sorry I caused you trouble. Lyra stopped pacing and looked at him. You did not cause it. I caused it by speaking without thinking. But I do not regret it. She sat back down. Jake Morrison, in 3 days you will fight Drock. I have taught you everything I can. But I must know. Are you afraid? Terrified, Jake admitted. Good. Fear keeps you alert. Lyra leaned back against the wall. Fear is not weakness. Cowardice is weakness. Fear is simply intelligence, recognizing danger. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Lyra, Jake said eventually. Thank you. For all of this. For training me. For believing I had a chance. You do have a chance. Small, but real. She turned to look at him. And you are welcome. Jake Morrison. On the morning of the 3rd day, Jake woke early. The trial would begin at midday. He did light stretches and reviewed everything Lyra had taught him. When he arrived at the arena, thousands of beings had gathered to watch. The news had spread throughout the station. A human was going to fight Drock the Undying. Most had come expecting to see a quick execution. Jake stood in the preparation room, wearing simple combat clothes. No armor. No weapons. Just like in the dock, Lyra entered the room. She wore her full ceremonial armor now, polished until it gleamed. Are you ready? She asked. As ready as I'll ever be. She walked up to him and placed her hand on his shoulder. It was a Valesian gesture of respect between warriors. Remember everything I taught you. Adapt. Endure. Do not try to match his strength. Outlast him. I will. Lyra hesitated. Then spoke in her own language. The translator didn't pick it up, but Jake heard the emotion in her voice. What did you say? He asked. I said, May your courage carry you to victory, Lyra translated. It is what we say to warriors before battle. I'm Selv. Lyra Tracid. Gevenin. Thank you. The doors to the arena began to open. Light flooded in, and Jake could hear the roar of the crowd. Lyra stepped back. "I will be watching. Make me proud to have trained you." Jake nodded and walked toward the light. The arena was massive. It stretched 50 meters across, with a hard metal floor that had seen countless battles. Viewing platforms rose on all sides, packed with aliens from dozens of species. Cameras floated through the air, broadcasting the trial across the sector. Jake walked to the center and looked up. Somewhere in those thousands of faces, Lyra was watching. A door on the opposite side opened. Drock the Undying entered, and the crowd went silent. He was enormous. 9 feet of muscle and bone, covered in the thick gray armor plating that made Krathians so dangerous. Scars covered his body, each one a story of survival. His eyes were small and mean, fixed on Jake with predatory focus. In his hands, he carried 2 massive blade clubs, traditional Krathian weapons that could crush bone with a single hit. Drock walked slowly to the center, each step shaking the arena floor. When he was 10 feet from Jake, he stopped and smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "Little human," Drock said, his voice like grinding rocks. "I have killed 47 in trial combat. You will be 48. Jake said nothing. Lyra had taught him that responding to threats was a waste of energy. The arena master, a neutral official from the Galactic Council, stepped forward. "This is a trial by combat, sanctioned under ancient law. The rules are simple. Fight until one cannot continue or yields. Killing is permitted. There are no other restrictions." The official looked at both fighters. "Do you understand?" Drock grunted. "Yes," Jake said. "Then, begin." The official vanished into a protected booth, and Drock charged. He was fast for his size. Jake barely dodged the first swing of the blade club. The weapon passed close enough that Jake felt the air move. It hit the floor where he had been standing, and left a dent in the metal. Jake rolled to the side as Drock swung again. The second blade club came from a different angle. Jake couldn't dodge both. So, he did what Lyra taught him. He moved into the attack instead of away from it, getting inside Drock's reach before the weapon built momentum. He struck at Drock's knee joint, the same weak spot he had used against the pirates. Drock grunted but didn't slow down. He backhanded Jake with his free hand. The impact sent Jake flying. He hit the arena floor hard and rolled. His vision blurred. That single hit had more force than anything the pirates had managed. "Get up, human," Drock bellowed. "Give them a show before you die." Jake got up. His jaw felt wrong, probably dislocated. He grabbed it and shoved it back into place with a painful click. The crowd made sounds of surprise. Many species would have stayed down from that hit. Drock charged again, both weapons swinging. This time, Jake was ready. He watched Drock's shoulders, not the weapons. Lyra had taught him that the body telegraphs attacks before the weapons move. He saw the pattern: right weapon high, left weapon low, then reverse. Drock was strong but predictable, just like Lyra said. Jake dodged the first 2 attacks, then dropped flat as the third swing passed over his head. While Drock was recovering his balance, Jake swept at his legs. It was like kicking a tree. Drock didn't fall, but he stumbled. Just a little. The crowd started making noise. This was lasting longer than anyone expected. For the next 3 minutes, Jake focused entirely on survival. He dodged, rolled, and occasionally landed strikes that did minimal damage. Drock's attacks were powerful, but started to show a rhythm. Every 7th swing, there was a slight pause as he repositioned his grip. Every time he missed with both weapons, he took 1 second to reset his stance. Jake started exploiting these tiny openings: a punch to the ribs during the grip reset, a kick to the knee during the stance adjustment. None of the hits did much damage, but they added up. More importantly, they frustrated Drock. "Stand still!" Drock roared. He was breathing harder now. His swings came slightly slower. Jake's body was covered in bruises and cuts. One eye was swelling shut. His left arm hung at an odd angle. But he was still moving. In the viewing stands, Lyra watched with her heart racing. She had trained him well, but Drock was more dangerous than she had expected. Jake was surviving, but he couldn't keep dodging forever. She watched Jake's movement pattern and realized something. He was hurting Drock. Slowly, carefully, Jake was controlling where Drock positioned himself in the arena, moving him toward the edge. Clever human. At the 7-minute mark, Drock made a mistake. He swung both weapons at once in a massive overhead strike designed to end the fight. Jake dodged to the side, and both blade clubs hit the arena floor with tremendous force. For just a moment, they stuck in the metal. Drock pulled at them, trying to free the weapons. Jake didn't hesitate. He ran forward and jumped, using Drock's bent back as a stepping stone to climb higher. He wrapped his good arm around Drock's thick neck and his legs around the Krathian's torso. It was a human wrestling technique called a rear naked choke. Drock released his weapons and reached back, trying to grab Jake. But Jake's position made it difficult. Drock's own armor plating prevented him from reaching behind his own neck effectively. "Get off!" Drock spun and threw himself backward, trying to crush Jake against the arena floor. The impact was brutal. Jake felt ribs crack, but he held on, tightening the choke. Drock struggled more frantically. He rolled, slammed backward again, clawed at Jake's arm. But Jake had locked the technique properly. The choke cut off blood flow to Drock's brain. Lyra stood up in the viewing area, along with thousands of other spectators. This was impossible. A human, fighting bare-handed, had Drock the Undying in a submission hold. Drock's movements became slower. His massive hands weakened. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Finally, Drock's hand slapped against the arena floor 3 times. The universal signal of surrender. Jake released the choke and rolled away. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, unable to believe it was over. The arena was absolutely silent for 3 heartbeats. Then, it erupted. Cheers, roars, whistles, and calls from dozens of species filled the air. Cameras swarmed around Jake. The arena master rushed out to officially declare him the victor. Drock lay on the floor, breathing hard, staring at the ceiling in shock. In 47 victories, he had never been defeated. And now a human, a supposedly weak species, had beaten him without even using a weapon. Medical teams rushed in. They checked Drock first, then came to Jake. He had 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, a dislocated shoulder, severe bruising, and multiple cuts. But he was alive. As they loaded him onto a medical stretcher, Jake saw Lyra pushing through the crowd. Her face showed an expression he couldn't quite read. Pride? Joy? Disbelief? She reached his side and looked down at him. "You won," she said quietly. "I did what you taught me," Jake replied through split lips. "Adapt. Endure." Lyra placed her hand over her heart, a Valesian gesture of deep respect. "You are worthy," she said in her own language, then switched to Galactic Common. "You have earned honor this day. Jake Morrison." As the medical team carried him away, Jake saw other humans in the crowd. Workers, traders, ship crew. They were all standing, watching him with expressions of pride. Something had changed. By surviving, by winning, Jake had changed how the galaxy saw humans. They were no longer just weak newcomers. They were survivors, fighters, beings worthy of respect. And for Lyra, watching him being carried to medical care, something else had changed. The words she had whispered in the dock were no longer just an expression of surprise. They had become something more. She truly wished he was hers. Jake spent 4 days in medical recovery. The advanced alien technology healed his broken bones and repaired his internal injuries, but the process was slow and painful. During that time, everything changed. The recording of his fight against Drak spread throughout the galaxy. Millions of beings watched a human defeat one of the most feared fighters in known space. News networks discussed it. Military analysts studied his tactics. Other species began to re-evaluate their assumptions about humanity. Human traders on Nexus 7 reported better treatment. Aliens who had ignored them now showed respect. Business deals that had fallen through were suddenly back on the table. One fight had shifted the perception of an entire species, but Jake barely noticed any of this. He was focused on healing and on the visits from Lyra. She came every day, sometimes twice. At first, she claimed it was to debrief him on the fight, to analyze what had worked and what could be improved. But as the days passed, the conversations became less about combat and more about everything else. They talked about philosophy and culture, about what it meant to be strong, about honor and duty and choice. They discovered they had similar views on many things, despite coming from completely different worlds. On the 5th day, Jake was cleared to leave medical. He walked out slowly, still sore but functional. Lyra was waiting for him in the corridor. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I got hit by a shuttle," Jake said. "But alive. That's what matters. Walk with me," Lyra said. They moved through the station together. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped to stare at Jake. Some nodded in respect. Others whispered to each other. One group of young aliens even asked for his autograph, which confused him greatly. "You are famous now," Lyra explained. "Whether you wanted to be or not. I just wanted to deliver cargo and mind my own business," Jake muttered. Lyra's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Then you should not have fought 3 pirates to save a stranger." They reached an observation deck that overlooked the station's main docking area. Ships of all sizes came and went, carrying goods and passengers throughout the galaxy. "I have something to tell you," Lyra said. She seemed nervous, which was unusual for her. "My commander has disciplined me for training you." "What? Why? I won." "That is the only reason the punishment is not worse. I disobeyed orders when I decided to help you. I prioritized my personal judgment over military discipline." She looked out at the stars. "I have been demoted 1 rank and removed from my diplomatic guard position. Lyra, I'm so sorry." "Do not apologize." She turned to face him directly. "I made my choice knowing the consequences, and I would make it again." "Why? Why risk so much for me?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember what I told you about the phrase, 'I wish they were mine'? You said it meant respect, and sometimes, something more." "Yes." Lyra's scales shifted color slightly, darker around her neck. "I need to explain something about Valesian culture. We do not love easily. We are a warrior race, raised to be strong and independent. Emotional attachments are considered weaknesses by many of my kind." Jake waited, sensing she had more to say. "But when a Valesian warrior does form an attachment, it is absolute. We choose carefully. But once we choose, we are completely committed." She looked directly into his eyes. "When I said those words in the dock, I did not fully understand what I was feeling. But now, after training you, after watching you fight, after talking with you these past days, I understand." "Understand what?" "That I have chosen you, Jake Morrison." The words came out firmly, with no hesitation. "In Valesian terms, I wish you were mine, not as a warrior of my species, but as a partner, as someone to stand beside, as a mate." Jake felt his heart race. "Lyra, I don't know what to say." "You do not have to say anything yet. I know this is sudden. I know we are from different species with different cultures. I know there are 1,000 practical problems with such a pairing." Lyra's voice softened slightly. "But I am a warrior. I do not lie about what I want, and I want to explore what could exist between us." Jake thought about the past week, about fighting beside this incredible being, about the conversations they had shared, about the way she had believed in him when everyone else thought he would die. On Earth, Jake said slowly, we have a similar concept. When you care deeply about someone and want to build a life with them, we say we're falling in love. Love, Lyra repeated. It is considered important to your species. Very important. And is this what you feel? Are you falling in love with me? Jake smiled despite his nervousness. I think I might be. You're brave, honorable, and you saved my life in more ways than one. You also terrified me a little at first, but now I can't imagine not having you around. Lyra's scales brightened slightly, the Valesian equivalent of a blush. Good. Then we will explore this together. What about your people? Won't they disapprove? Many will, but some will understand. And those who matter most to me already know. Lyra moved closer. Besides, I am already demoted and reassigned. The worst has happened. Now I am free to make my own choices. Reassigned where? I have been transferred to Frontier Patrol. I will be traveling to different systems, investigating security concerns, helping establish diplomatic relationships. She paused. It is a position that requires a ship and someone who knows the outer trade routes well. Jake understood immediately. You need a pilot. I need a partner, Lyra corrected. Someone who understands both the dangers of space and the importance of protecting others. Someone adaptable and brave. Someone who fights not for glory, but because it is right. That sounds like a job description written specifically for me. Perhaps it was. Lyra tilted her head. What do you say? Jake Morrison. Will you join me? Well. Lyra Telter. Will you join me? Jake thought about his old life. Flying alone through empty space. Delivering cargo. Living day to day. It was safe, and predictable, and lonely. Then he thought about the possibility before him. Traveling with Lyra. Facing challenges together. Building something new between two species who had just met. Yes, he said. Lyra stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder, then touched her forehead to his. It was a gesture of intimate trust in Valesian culture, only shared between closest companions. Thank you, she whispered. They stood like that for a moment, two beings from different worlds, beginning something that neither fully understood but both wanted to try. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake prepared his ship for the journey. He sold his cargo contracts and informed his contacts that he was taking a new position. Other human traders congratulated him, though some looked envious. Working alongside a Valesian was now considered prestigious. Lyra moved her belongings onto Jake's ship. She had surprisingly few possessions for someone who had lived on the station for 3 years. Mostly weapons, armor, and a few personal items. Valesians travel light, she explained. We believe that attachment to objects makes you weak. What about attachment to people? Jake asked. That makes you strong. Objects cannot fight beside you. People can. On the day of departure, several beings came to see them off. The merchant Jake had saved brought an expensive gift. Station security officers who had trained with Lyra saluted her. Even some of the other human traders showed up, but the most surprising visitor was Drock. The massive Crothian walked up to the ship's loading ramp. Lyra tensed, ready for trouble. But Drock just looked at Jake and nodded slowly. Human fought with honor, Drock said in his rough voice. Drock respects this. You teach me that strength comes in many forms. Thank you, Jake said, genuinely surprised. If you ever need warrior to fight beside you, send message. Drock remembers those who show him truth. The Krathian turned and walked away without another word. That was unexpected, Jake said. You changed his understanding of the universe, Lyra replied. For a warrior like Drock, that is a profound gift. They boarded the ship. Jake took his seat at the pilot's controls. Lyra sat in the co-pilot chair, studying the instruments with interest. Ready? Jake asked. Ready, Lyra confirmed. Jake activated the engines. The ship lifted off smoothly and moved toward the station exit. As they cleared the docking bay and entered open space, the stars stretched out before them in an infinite array. "Where to first?" Jake asked. Lyra pulled up a star chart. "There is a system 3 days from here. Reports of smuggling activity. The local authorities have requested Galactic Council investigation." "Sounds dangerous." "Probably." Lyra looked at him. "Does this concern you?" Jake thought about the past few weeks. About fighting pirates and surviving a trial by combat. About finding someone who understood him in a way no one ever had before. About choosing to stand up, even when it would be easier to walk away. "No," he said with a smile. "Dangerous is what we do." Lyra's scales brightened with pleasure. She reached over and took his hand. Her grip was strong and warm. "Then let us go do dangerous things together, Jake Morrison." The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying them toward their first adventure. Behind them, Nexus 7 grew smaller in the distance. Ahead, the unknown awaited. And for the first time in years, Jake Morrison felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Not alone in space, delivering cargo to strangers, but beside someone who chose him. Someone who saw his worth when others saw weakness. Someone who wished he was hers. And in the quiet of the ship, as they traveled toward whatever came next, Jake whispered something in return. Words that meant everything. "I'm glad you're mine too."